Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. What is up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be going through my start sits at the quarterback position for every single Week 15 matchup. I feel like at this point in the season, we have a pretty solid idea of what quarterbacks we can rely on a week-to-week basis. So now with playoffs starting, I'm not out here to make some hot takes about Baker Mayfield's going to go out 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'm just going to lock in on those QBs who have been performing at a high level consistently. And I'm going to start it off in the Thursday night game with the Chiefs taking on the Chargers. And I want both of these quarterbacks in my lineup, Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. I'm still not 100% bought in on this Chiefs offense, but like we saw against the Raiders, you just can't sit Patrick Mahomes when he has that top tier QB1 potential. Same thing with Justin Herbert. The man is balling out in his sophomore season, and it looks like he's going to have Keenan Allen back, so his number one weapon back in the game. Sounds like a great recipe for Justin Herbert. Then we move on to Saturday with the Raiders-Browns matchup. Derek Carr was someone who early in the season, it looked like he was going to have some juice as like a back-end quarterback one. Unfortunately, just not a great wide receiver core around him. It looks like Darren Waller may be back this week, but I still am just not trusting Derek Carr, so he is going to be a sit. Same thing with Baker Mayfield. I don't know if I've listed him as a start one time this season. He hasn't been playing great. The weapons around him are also not very solid, so both quarterbacks are going to be sitting in this one. Then we have the Patriots taking on the Colts, and I think both Mac Jones and Carson Wentz, have kind of had their own weeks where they ball out in solid matchups. Unfortunately, I don't think this is one of them. Mac Jones going up against a pretty tough Colts defense. We know they just don't have to rely on him to win. They want to run the ball, and he's kind of a secondary piece in that offense. For the Colts, the Patriots defense is very tough, and so I don't really want to play a guy like Carson Wentz in a negative matchup. Next up is a divisional matchup between the Cowboys and the Giants, and even though I think Dak Prescott could be performing a little bit better, he is still doing more than enough at a fantasy football level, so Dak Prescott is a solid start. Then for the Giants, whether it's Daniel Jones, Mike Glennon, or Jake Fromm, just sit in any of those QBs. And then in probably the ugliest quarterback matchup of the week, we have the Texans taking on the Jaguars. I know Davis Mills has had at least one or two games this season where he actually looks solid. I don't think he can do this on a consistent basis. So even though he's going up against a rough Jaguars defense, I still think he's a pretty solid sit. Same thing with Trevor Lawrence. I'm just excited to see this offense run when Urban Meyer is gone in 2022. Hopefully he's gone. I mean, if they do bring him back, that would be pretty brutal for all those guys. So I guess we just have to hope that he is not returning in 2022. Then we've got the Titans taking on the Steelers, and I'm going to be sitting both of these quarterbacks also. Ryan Tannehill just not really getting it done without Derrick Henry, and obviously A.J. Brown is still on IR, so his weapons are not super solid around him. I'm pretty sure his two leading receivers on Sunday were the two tight ends, Ferkser and Swaim, and both of those guys are just not great players, if we're being honest, so he doesn't have the support around him, and he's just not one of these top-tier elite guys who can, still perform with poor weapons. And then for Ben Roethlisberger, he's going to have a few games this season where he goes out 300 yards, a few touchdowns, but mostly it's going to be because the team is down and he kind of needs to do that. This is probably going to be a closer, low-scoring game, so I just don't have a ton of trust in him, and he is going to be a sit. Moving on to a divisional matchup between the Jets and the Dolphins, I'm sitting Zach Wilson. Just not a great Jets offense going up against a pretty solid Dolphins defense. On the other side with the Dolphins, I'm starting Tua. He's been playing very well as of late, and this is a fantastic matchup against the Jets. We've got another divisional game between the Washington football team and the Eagles. We actually saw Taylor Heineke go down with a knee injury on Sunday. It looks like he is expected to play this week against the Eagles. He is going to be a sit. For the Eagles, it was really great to see Gardner Minshew go out and ball out, but it does look like Jalen Hurts is going to be able to get the start this week, and if he does play, he is a very strong start due to that top-tier rushing upside. Another guy who has top-tier rushing upside is Kyler Murray, who faces off against the Lions. Obviously, you're plugging Kyler Murray into your lineup as a high-end quarterback one, and then probably equally as obviously, you're going to be sitting Jared Goff against the Cardinals. Panthers Bills are up next, and for the Panthers, this whole situation is just a total mess. First game Cam Newton was back. It looked like, man, like he could make a fantasy impact at the quarterback position, but he has just not played well. It looks like now they're going to go with some sort of 2 QB system with Newton and PJ Walker. I mean, that just sounds like it is going to be a major mess. So both of those guys are very clear sits. And then for the Bills, you continue to fire up Josh Allen as a high-end RB1. Then we have the Bengals taking on the Broncos. For the Bengals, you keep throwing Joe Burrow in as like a back-end QB1 option and sitting Teddy Bridgewater, who just has no ceiling at the quarterback position. Then we have the Falcons taking on the 49ers, and I'm going to be sitting both of these quarterbacks. Matt Ryan just does not have the support around him, and Jimmy G puts together, some solid games from time to time, but we know they want to be a run-first team, and so that's just not going to lead to a lot of consistency out of Jimmy G. So Matt Ryan and Jimmy G are going to be sits this week. It seems like we've had a lot of sits so far at the quarterback position, but that's just because honestly a lot of the top quarterbacks have been log jammed to the back of this week's matchups. And so we're going to go on a run here of a lot of quarterback starts, starting it off in the Seahawks Rams game. I'm going to be starting both Russell Wilson and Matthew Stafford. I definitely feel more confident in Stafford, but I do think this Seahawks offense has looked a lot better. They are going up against a tough defense. We don't really know how the COVID situation is going to change this. The Rams team has been hit hard by it. So is Jalen Ramsey going to be back? We just don't really know. I think Russell Wilson is like a solid, back-end quarterback one play. Matthew Stafford, more of a mid-tier QB1 option. Honestly, mid to high-end QB1. Then the next matchup, more stud quarterbacks. Packers traveling to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Both Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson locked in solid QB plays. Then Sunday night, we have the Saints traveling to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Even though it looks like the Bucs are just going to run away with this game, most likely, I still think Taysom Hill is a very strong start. We saw that rushing upside once again. This is not a scary Buccaneers defense. I mean, we saw how Josh Allen just absolutely carved them with his legs. I think Taysom Hill could do the exact same thing. So Hill's a start. Same thing with Tom Brady. Continue to fire him up as a high-end QB1 option. And then for the final game of the week, we have the Vikings traveling to Soldier Field to take on the Bears. For the Vikings, I think you can plug in Kirk Cousins as a solid back-end QB1 like you do every single week. And then for the Bears, Justin Fields is probably on the fringe of being a start-sit. I ended up going with a sit. We know he has that ceiling with his rushing ability, but we also know there's a lot of inconsistency with that Bears offense. He doesn't have a ton of support around him, and so I could totally see him going out, putting up like an 8-point game, and that could just totally kill your week in the playoffs. So I would kind of ease away from starting Justin Fields, but if he's your best option, I don't think he is the worst play in the world. And that is going to wrap it up for this video. Every single week 15 matchup. If you enjoy the content, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And then if you have any fantasy questions, start sits, waiver wires, drop them down below in the comment section, and I'll be getting back to every single person. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.